Welcome back, everybody, to Empyrion Galactic Survival on version 1.1. This is the Getting Started tutorial series, and I am anoldguygaming. And in this episode, we are going to go through a basic block tutorial. So we've worked with blocks a little bit now, to build the base, and we worked with them a little bit several episodes ago when we went through, the paint and texture tool. But what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to look at the blocks a little more closely and try and get our brains around how to work with them in this game, at least at a more basic level. Now, one of the things that I want to encourage you guys to do after you watch this is take some time and go watch the video from Red Baron, and I'll put the links in the description. Red Baron did a block tutorial video, which is really good, and then Jay Randall did a 3-part block tutorial series, which is also very good. Red Baron's is just a single video, and I think it's good to watch that one first, because then when you watch Jeff's videos, you'll already have a little bit more understanding of what's going on. And Jeff's going to go into a lot more detail in his videos and cover more blocks and more things that you can do with them. But there's a lot to this, guys, and so my intention, because this is a getting started tutorial, is not to show you every possible thing that you can do with the blocks, because that's too much for this tutorial. A and B, even myself, I can't sit here and claim to know every possible thing you can do with these blocks, because there's just almost an infinite number of possibilities and arrangements and different designs that you can do. So the goal here is just to give you guys the very basics and point you in the right direction. But again, I just encourage you to watch Red Baron's video and the 3 videos from Jeff Randall at some point after this to really, help you get a good grasp of how the blocks work. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in and see what we can learn about this. So I think what we'll do is, for this tutorial, we have a flash flood warning. That's what that noise is. Sorry about that. So for this tutorial, I think the first thing we're going to do is let's make our pad a little bit darker, so it'll contrast better with the blocks that we're going to lay down. So we could use, I don't know, it doesn't really matter a whole lot as long as it's darker. I don't want it to have a lot of design on it though either. So we could. What does this look like? Let's use the replace option. Yeah, that could probably be okay. That could probably be okay. What if we make it a little darker too? Yeah, okay, that's good. Let's go with that. So, we are going to select the block, and we're going to right-click, and that, of course, brings up the block menu. So the block menu is divided into 7 different pages. The first page is the basic shapes. The basic shapes are going to be the shapes that you're going to use the most often. I don't have an actual percentage for you, but you could say, I don't know, maybe 60-70% of the time the stuff you'll build in the game, unless you're doing like really intricate stuff, you'll probably grab from the basic shapes menu. So that's why it's the first one. The next one is just all shapes. There's 3 pages of blocks, and sometimes I'll come here if I'm looking for a specific block and I'm just having an old guy moment and I'm not able to find it on the individual pages. I'll come here and take a look. Then you have your cubes and ramps. So this has, as you can imagine, squares, cubes, ramps, 45-degree angles, corner blocks, stuff like that. You've got your round shapes and pipes, pretty self-explanatory. And you have your corners and connectors. We're going to be working in this menu quite a bit too. So, it's got corners, but it's also got the transition blocks, and they're very important to have a basic understanding of. Then you have your wall blocks. So these are your thin plate blocks or your wall blocks. And then you have corridor elements, which are just kind of a little bit more fancy sculpted types of blocks that you might use for deco or overlays and trim work and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the basic shapes. Now, the one thing about the names of these blocks are that it's really kind of hard to quantify how these names actually match up, or how they relate to the blocks as a whole. Okay, in one sense, you could kind of sort of see some correlation between the names, but then another block will be, use the same mechanism that you would use to make that correlation and completely blow it out of the water. So, I mean, we can talk about it a little bit, but I think it's better to not get hung up on trying to figure out what the names mean, at least in terms of how one block is related to another. What is better is for you to understand and pay attention to the facings on the blocks. Because when I match one block up to another, what I want to do is I want to make sure that the face of one block is the same facing on the other block where they touch. And if I do that, then I'm going to make sure that I have clean lines, and I'm not going to have what I call hard lines. So a hard line is when you put two blocks together and they don't quite match up, and so you got this hard, ugly line. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but you want to minimize, if you want to do, something that's a pretty decent looking build, whether it's a base or a vessel or whatever, you want to minimize hard lines where possible. And sometimes if you can't do anything about the hard line, then, you might be able to turn that hard line into something that looks like you intended to do it, like with textures and that sort of thing. So the very first thing to understand is that when I look at a block and I'm going to attach another block to it, I want to make sure that the other block, at least on one side, has the same facing as the block that I'm attaching to. So, for example, we're looking at ramp A and cut corner C here. Notice that ramp A has this little shape on one side, okay? So it goes all the way up to the top, then it kind of slices down to half of the block and then a straight edge back down. And cut corner C also has that same exact shape. So I can take these two blocks, I can set them down, and I can put them together, and they match up. And I have a nice clean line right here, okay? So that's the first thing for you to get in your head, is when you are working with the blocks in the game, pay attention to and get used to the facings of the block, and know that your goal is to match up blocks that have the same facings. In other words, attach those blocks together where their facings are identical, and if you do that, then you will get clean lines. Okay? That's easier said than done. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is easy to do. What I will tell you is that the more that you do work with it and do it, like anything else, the more familiar it'll become to you. And at some point, if you really want to become a good builder in this game, you will, the more you work with it, the better you get. That's really what it amounts to. Okay? So there isn't a real... I can't sit here and give you a magic formula that's gonna help you just all of a sudden instantaneously become a good builder in this game. One of Empyrion's strong points is its building. A lot of people consider this one of the best voxel building games there is, and so because of that, it's not an easy thing to learn. I mean, anybody can build a cube or a box or even a circle, per se. But to build something that's truly magnificent, you got to spend some time in this game. You got to put the work in, and you really got to get your head around how the blocks work in order to do that. And you can do that if you spend the time at it. Okay, I consider myself an intermediate builder. I'm not a pro, but I know enough, and I've done enough, and I've spent enough time in the game and with the blocks, that I consider myself, a good builder. I'm not the best builder. I'm not a pro builder, but I'm certainly, beyond just beginning building with the builds that I've done. So that means then that, I should be able to at least show you the basics and get you started in the right direction, along with my recommendation to watch Red Baron's video and Jeff Randall's 3-part series on the block tutorial. Okay, so that being said, let's just kind of go through some important things that you're going to want to know. So I'm going to actually select a block. If I hold down the Shift key and right click, I can just remove or delete the blocks that I don't want there. So let's look at some stuff in the menu. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the basic shapes menu, and you really have what you might think of as 4 different groupings of blocks, and both the Red Baron and Jeff Randall will get into this in more detail than I will. But you really have what I consider 4 different groupings of blocks. In other words, blocks that fit together to create slopes and angles and wedges and that sort of thing. And they're really important to understand in this game. So your first and most basic blocks that you will work with are your your ramps and your cubes, right? So you got your cube there, and we already know that our goal is to make sure that when we attach those blocks that the sides that they're attaching on match. So this is very obvious, of course, and these will match up just fine. And then so you could call these like your most basic. I mean, it doesn't get any more basic than this, and everybody can understand this, and everybody can do it without having to think really too hard about it, right? But what about if you want to match up blocks on multiple sides? So in this case, now we have, if we want to fill in this area here, we've got 2 sides that we have to match on, and the rule still applies. Wherever the new block that I put in touches or attaches to what's already there, they need to match up on all sides so I have clean lines. So the block that I would put in here is going to be this corner C. See how corner C fits in there nice and neat? Okay, I've got clean lines. Or alternatively, I could also use corner half A3. Same thing, it's just that it has a different effect. In this case, of course, it's sliced diagonally, and so it gives me more of a beveled corner rather than a sharp corner. I'm not saying one's better than the other. It depends upon what you're trying to do and what how you're trying to build. Okay, so that leads us then to really, I said there's 4 groups. If you count the cube and the 45, you could even say there's 5 groups. But that group is just so basic that it's pretty darn it's pretty darn obvious. Darn obvious. What we want to look at, though, is we actually want to look at corner half A3 and cut corner E. So these are going to be your first group, and what we're going to do with this group is we're going to call this group the 45s, the 45 group. So what I can do is I can lay several of these cut corner E's out, and then I'm going to right click and choose corner half A, and it fits in there nice and neatly, like so. And what I can do with just these 2 blocks is I can start building myself a 45-degree wall that slants at 45 degrees. So let's go back to cut corner E here, and that's going to fit in here. And so with just these 2 blocks alone, we can build ourselves a slanted wall. Okay, and we can just keep going all the way up until it comes to a point, or we extend it out if we want to make it even longer. And so that's why I like to call this first group that we're looking at, I like to call them the 45s, because they create a 45-degree slope. And they're 45 degrees on both planes. That's the other thing that's important to understand for later on, right? This plane going up is 45 degrees, and this plane going up is 45 degrees. So these are our 45s. All right. Now, let's take a look next at what I call the 2245 group. Now, both Red Baron and Jeff Randall don't use those terms, but they will, they're going to talk about the same blocks, but I like to name them that because it describes the angles that they create. Okay, so the 45-25 blocks are all 4 of these blocks in this 4th row, and they're the only group of the groups we're looking at that are actually all contiguously together on one row. The rest of the groups are not contiguously together, unfortunately. It's just the way that Elion did it. Corner half A3 and corner cut E are on the same row at least, and they're close to each other. But these are right next to each other, and you're going to use these a lot. These are just the fundamental, some of the probably one of the most fundamental sets in the game to work with, and these are the 45/20s. Okay, so how do these work? What it's a good idea to do, and what it's recommended to do, is when you're first starting out and you're first trying to learn this, is start out with the smallest block first, because it's the easiest one to orient to the direction that you want to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to select cut corner small c, and right now it's vertical, but what I want to do with this guy is I want to actually turn it horizontal. You know what I think I'm going to do? Let's actually lighten up our pad here a little bit so that we can actually see the ghost version of the block a little better. So how about if we go with a gray instead? How does that look? Yeah, that's a little bit better. So now we can see the ghost version a little bit better. Okay, so now we need to remember basically how to use the rotation skills that we've already looked at several times and worked with several times in this tutorial series. So what I want to do is I want to put this thing down on its side, right? So I'm going to use either the delete or the insert key to change my axis until I can flip this the way that I want. And then I'm going to use my end or home keys to get it flipped in the direction that I want it to go. Okay, and then once I have it in that direction, then I just click the mouse button and then I set it down. Let me look at something here. Yeah, let's actually set it this direction instead. Doesn't really matter actually, but yeah, we'll do that. Okay, I want to get rid of this other block, so I'm going to hold down the shift key and right click to get rid of that. Okay, now when you're laying out the 2245s horizontally, you just simply go right down the row. So this is our first one, this is the next one, this is the next one, and this is the next one. And you see how those all fit together? And then at this point, what we do is we go back to this one and we lay that down. No, I'm sorry. We have to put that one here. And then this one goes here. And this block would actually end up being just a whole block if you're going to fill that in. So what you can do again is you just essentially keep working this row with the blocks as you continue to build it out. And see, they all fit together, and you just go right down the line, bing, bang, boom. Now what I would do here is, remember this line is going out that way, so as I extend it back this way, unless it's my intention to have this, this right angle here, then I just keep extending it out further. So one way you could do this too, if you know kind of how far back you're going to go, is you could actually lay these out in advance. Whoops, no, that's not where I want that to go. You could lay these out in advance like so, right? And then you just go to the next set of blocks. What the hell just happened? Oh, I must have selected the wrong thing. And lay that out, and then you go to the next block here, and you lay those out, and you just kind of keep working like that until you get the blocks laid out in however far you want them to go as you're working out horizontally. So the thing to understand here, and this is this might seem obvious, but it might not, is that when I'm working horizontally, I'm not just going this way, but I also am going this way. I'm going 22 degrees that way, okay? And if we look at these blocks, let's go ahead and build this up just a little higher. Yeah, that can go right in there. Okay, if we look at the planes on this block, you'll notice that this plane is 22.5 degrees. I just call it 22, but it's actually 22.5 degrees. But this plane going up this way is 45 degrees. Okay? And that's why I call this group the 2245s. So when it goes up this slope, it's 22 degrees, but when it's going up this slope, it's back to 45 degrees. That's important to understand because I might want to create a transition from the 2245s to the 45s. And so if I understand that this side here going up is 45 degrees, then what that means is I can actually attach a 45-degree block to that side. So for example, let's grab a block and let's change to our 45. We're going to have to rotate it and see what's happening here. I have at this section here, sorry, wrong thing. At this section here, now this isn't right, but I'll talk about that in a second. But at this section here, see, I've created a clean line, but I've transitioned from the 2245s to the 45s. Now, in this particular case, unless it's my intention to have a little flat area here, I would also want to bring this down, whoops, all the way there. Let me get over the top of that. Nope. Sometimes the little shift-click method can be a little bit of a challenge. And so in that case, I probably wouldn't continue, you know, the 2245s out that way if this is my transition point. The main thing I want you to understand about the 2245s and about any blocks is the fact that because this has, one side of it has a 45-degree angle, I can, if I want to transition, I can connect a 45-degree block to that side for my transition. That's the most important thing that you can take away from what we just did here. Okay, so we've got our 45s and we have our 2245s. It is also possible to do the opposite. So I can attach the 2245s to the 45s following the same basic principle. So let's tell you what we'll do here. Let's go ahead and get into our selection menu for a second. And I want to do a little selection here. And we'll just delete this because it's going to be a little quicker than me trying to individually delete each block. And we need to come out this way a little bit. And let's delete. Okay, and then we'll remove the selection. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to transition off the 45s to the 2245s. We're going to basically do the opposite here. So what we have to do for that to work is we have to find within our group here, which of these blocks is going to fit on a 45-degree side. And the answer to that is either the bottom of this one or the top of this one will work. It just depends upon which direction you want to go. So let's select corner half B for example. If I take corner half B, and I'm going to have to rotate it to get it lined up, but I know by looking at this block that the bottom of it is the same facing as our 45 side here. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to rotate this block so that I can butt it up against the 45, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it this way, flip it that way, and then change the axis to this axis and turn it around until it matches up. And look at that. Now I've transitioned from 45 to 2245. At this point, now I just continue building this out just like I would. So let's just kind of pre-lay these down. And now I've created that transition, and this might be, for example, this could be like the front part of the hull on my big capital vessel, but then I want to kind of flare it out and go this direction. Okay, so the key to this, you guys, when you're new, the key to this and the thing that's going to make it a lot easier for you is to remember that whenever you line up a block or attach one block to another, you want to make sure that those two sides are the same exact side, the same exact dimension. And as long as you understand that, and you can look at the block and you can tell by looking at it what that side is, you'll be able to do this, figure this out in no time, and you'll be able to start making some really cool shapes. Okay, now let's look at the third set. The third set of blocks is what I call just the 22s, and as you can imagine, that's because both planes are 22 degrees or 22.5 degrees. So these ones, unfortunately, you have to kind of fish around for them a little bit. So if you go to the corners and connectors category, what you're looking for is you're looking for this corner half A3 medium. Again, don't get hung up on how LN decided to name these blocks. You're just gonna confuse yourself. I've tried to figure it out, guys, and maybe there is a rhyme and reason to it. But what I found partial rhymes and reasons, but I haven't found a rhyme and reason that applies to the whole entire collection. So I finally decided, you know what, screw it. I don't care about the names. I don't care about trying to match the names up. All I care about is learning the blocks, the facings on the blocks, so I know what to attach to where. Okay, so this is our first one in the group. This is our smallest one in the group. Again, like I said, it's easiest to start with the smallest one. So let's click on that. And then, you know, we need to decide now what we want to do or what angle we want to put this block in. And when I say this is just the 22, it's actually the 22 if you lay it flat. But if it's vertical, then it's whatever the geometric opposite of 22 is, at least on, you know, on that one plane. And I'm not a geometry person by any stretch of the imagination, so I couldn't tell you exactly what you would call that. But some of you might be geometry people and probably know exactly what that would be called. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to lay that block down, and we're going to then go back into the menu, and we want to go back to the basic shapes category. You could also find them here, but I just like to go back to basic shapes. And the next block that fits in this group is sliced corner D. Okay, sliced corner D. I'm going to click sliced corner D and look at that. It fits nice and neat at that 22 degree plane. And then the last block in this group, the third block in this group, is cut corner C. Look at that. And those are the three blocks that make up what I call the 22 group. And then if we want to continue building these out, we go back to corners and connectors. We find corner half A. We go back to basic blocks. We find slice corner D. And then we go to cut corner C. And in that way, just like before, we can continue building out these blocks as we want to, however far we want to do it. Cut corner C. Okay, and as you can see, I'm really just doing the same exact thing here with the 22s as I did with the 2245s, and the same thing that I did with the 45s. It's just a matter of knowing the blocks and knowing how they fit together, and then just starting, you know, to put them together. Now remember, if I was doing this for real, if I was actually working on building a ship or a base or whatever, I'd have the symmetry plane on, so, you know, everything I'm doing is being mirrored on the other side. The one thing, and I did mention this, I think, in the last episode, you know, we do have the copy and paste tool, and it's amazing, and you can do some cool stuff with it. But the one thing the copy and paste is not going to do for you is it's not going to mirror what you're creating. So it's only going to work for you if the object that you're building it needs to be the same exact dimensions on all sides. If it needs to be mirrored, then the copy and paste tool is not going to work for you. Okay, so yeah. Those are basically our blocks. So let's build this out one more level here. So we want to go back to corners and connectors and click here. Actually, let's put that one there too, and then we'll fill that one in with slice corner D. There. Okay, and likewise, as you can imagine, I can also connect the 22s to either the 45s or the 2245s. They will all marry together. It's just, again, a matter of finding the facing on these blocks that matches up with the block that you're trying to do. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how these blocks can also be used for creating ramps, which effectively can become like hoods or front ends of your vessels. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to the very basic blocks. Okay, so let's put our cube down, and we could do ramp C, but what we're actually going to look at next is also a very commonly used block, and this is the ramp A block. And we actually used this a couple of episodes ago when we built our landing pad in the survival game to actually make a ramp. Well, that's what it is. It's a ramp, but you don't just use it to make ramps for vessels. You use it for all kinds of things. So it's a very commonly used block. So what we're going to do is we're going to line this up to here, and then we're going to choose ramp C medium, which is basically the tip of the ramp, to kind of create our hood. And then, you know, we could put this down and continue going up if we wanted to. Now, the next thing we can do is we can build either the 22s or the 2245s off of this ramp, depending upon, you know, how much we want the slope. Do we want a more gradual slope with the 22s, or do we want a sharper slope with the 2245s? So if we work with the 2245s, we're going to go back and we're going to select corner small c, and we have to once again, you know, get it rotated so it's the right orientation, like so, and we pop that in place. We grab the next one, pop it in place. We grab the next one, pop it in place. We grab the next one, pop it in place, and in this way we can start building out the hood of our vessel, like so. Okay. If we wanted to do this instead with the 22s, it's the same exact principle. So let's do the different angle on this side. So now we're going to go grab our corner half A medium, and once again we have to get it oriented the way we want it, and yep, that's what we want, so we put that there. Then we go back to the basic shapes. We grab slice corner D, we put that in place. Then we go to cut corner C, and we put that in place. And then we go back to a corner half A3 medium, put that in place, and again just build it out in the same manner as before. Okay. This one's harder to work with because the blocks aren't together, so you have to kind of stop and think, okay, where do I got to go to get that next one? But, you know, like I said, the more you work with it, the easier it will become, the more second nature it will become. So what we did here is we created two different slopes. This is a 45-degree slope, or this is a 22-degree slope, so it's a more gentle slope on our vessel. Now, I'm not suggesting you would actually do this. You would use one or the other, but I'm just showing you how you can build out a hood with those, you know, with that type of a setup, okay? The key, if you don't remember anything else, guys, if you don't remember anything else about this tutorial, remember that all you need to know is you need to make sure you match up the facings on one block to the one you're going to attach it to get your clean lines. Okay, so let's see, what do we want to look at next? The next group that we want to take a look at are the transition blocks. These are also very important blocks because what they will often do is they'll get you out of a pickle. So what you'll be doing is you'll be building along, and you'll be designing your ship, and everything will be going great, and then you'll get to a transition, and you just can't find the block that you want to put into that area, and so you start scratching your head, go, what the hell am I going to do with this? So that's where the transition blocks are going to come into play. Now, sometimes, and in fact very often, you don't need a special block for the transition. You just kind of need to figure out where your line's going and build it out accordingly. So in this particular case, the way that I could continue this seam here is that I just keep building out this line to where everything matches. All right, so it's kind of, in order to show you that, let's do this. Let's come back to here. That we're back to our 45 or our 2245. So our group here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it. And I guess the other thing I want to tell you too is as you're doing this, okay, you might not. There. You might not be able to completely visualize it at this point. Just keep building it out, and pretty soon it'll start to come together, and you'll go, "Oh, right, that's how that's going to work." Okay, especially, you know, when you're new and you're still trying to figure things out. So to build this out so that it looks good, I want to kind of, you know, build up both sides and keep it going until I find how it, you know, basically junctures together, right? So this block here, let's see, I got to find the right one. Okay, so that block fits there, but now see how we have a bit of a problem here? It's not working anymore because it's not following the lines, right? So this is not the block that's going to fit in here. What I need to do is I need to figure, okay, what is the right block to put in there? Well, what I might do in this case is I might go ahead and go back to my original 45 group. And again, that is the... where the hell's it at? Oh, cut corner E and corner half A3. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put cut corner E in there and look, oh, okay, I'm starting to see how this is actually going to work now. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to switch back to corner A3, and then I'll put cut corner E in there. And when I get to that point, I can now fill out, or finish out rather, my transition going back to the 2245s. Okay, so the lesson that I want you to walk away with here is, as I was putting this transition together, it was not immediately clear to me which side I should build up. So what I did is I started building up this side, but then I got to a point where I realized, wait a minute, I can't keep going this way because it's not going to line up. So I switched back over to this side and started building this side up, and pretty soon it became very obvious what I needed to do to finish out the transition. So just work with it, and as you work with it, it'll become obvious to you how you should put those blocks together. So when you make these transitions, very, very often you can do the transition just with the two groups of blocks and you don't need a special block. However, there are going to be times, depending upon what you're trying to do and the angles that you're working with and those sorts of things, that you are going to need to use a special transition block. So let's take a look at those next. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the menu, and I'm going to go back to corners and connectors. Elion should have really named these corners and transitions. I mean, a connector block, it is really kind of the same thing. It's a transition block, but I don't know. Most people will think more of these as transitions. So we've got some really weird looking blocks here with some really weird angles, and that is by design, because these weird angles are designed to allow you to smoothly transition from two different blocks that otherwise have no matching facings or matching faces. Because remember, that's always your golden rule, guys. I got to match up the two blocks on the facings that are the same to get those smooth lines. You know, that's what you got to remember in every single case. Okay, so let's take a look at these. Now, some blocks are going to have right and left versions as well. And so that's important to understand too, because if I'm trying to figure out which one of these blocks to use, I really have to figure out two things. The first thing I have to figure out is what's my facings, but I also need to understand, do I need to use the right block or the left block? There's no real good trick for that other than, again, looking at the facings, figuring it out, and if nothing else, just try both until you figure out which one it is. Okay, so this first group is ramp connector A, left and right. So let's go ahead and put... what I want to do with this too is I'm going to actually turn it this way. Okay, so that is left and this is right. We're going to have to flip it around like so. Now we have ramp connector B left, which we want to put there, and ramp connector B right, which we want to put there. See, now it's already getting a little bit weird because I started with left on this side and put right there, but on this side I had to put left on this side and right on this side. So it does get a little bit weird. But what I did in order to put these down so they are mirroring one another is, again, I looked at the sides and I matched them up based upon the sides. Ramp connector C left will go here, and ramp connector C right rather will go here. Okay, and then we've got ramp connector D left, which we'll put here. Ramp connector D right will go here, and then ramp connector E left and ramp connector E right. Okay, so these are kind of weird transition blocks, but whenever you are in a situation where you can't get those lines matched up no matter what when you're trying to do your transition. The first thing you should do is come to these sets of blocks and see if maybe what you're looking for is not in this group. I'm resetting these so they're actually spaced out better. So that is 1, 2, 3. This is 1, 2, 3. And then let's move these out 3 blocks too. Ramp connector E. So 1, 2, 3, and right there. Okay. So now, following our golden rule here, what would fit in between these blocks? Any block that matches the side that I'm attaching it to, right? So in this particular case, the block that would fit in here nicely is our good old standby Mr. Ramp A. See? What would fit in here? Mr. Ramp A. But what about this one? Ramp A is not going to fit neatly in here. Okay, well, what I need to pay attention to in this case is, see how both of these blocks come down to a half of the block's height there in both cases? The difference, though, between this set and this set is that this cut goes down to 1/8 of a block, whereas this cut goes all the way down to the bottom, all the way down to the corner. But the side that I'm matching up, however, is the side that that matches this particular block. But that's not, I'm not going to be able to use that block because I've got a different cut here. This one is steeper and it's cut down to about 1/8 of a block. So if I wanted to line those up, what I would do is I would have to find the block that would fit in there. I'm looking for this same kind of shape, but I'm looking for one that's cut down lower to about 1/8 of the height of the block. And guess what? We actually have that very block right here. It's called Ramp B. Look at that. Boom. It fits nice and neat. Okay, and then, you know, if I wanted to finish this, you know, finish this out, I just look at the facing and I got to find another block that's going to fit that 1/8 of a face right there. And so I'm going to go into the block menu. I'm going to look for stuff that would butt up against 1/8 of a face. This Ramp C low will fit beautifully. And then, you know, if I want to fill out those corners, then I just need to find a low corner block that will fit in there, and that block is actually going to be found in corners and connectors, and it's this guy right here. See, nice clean lines. Okay, so that's all fine and good. Oh, I used I used concrete for armored concrete. But what about if I'm connecting on this side instead? Well, you know, the principle's the same. If this is the side that I'm connecting, then I'm going to want, in this particular case, I'm going to want our good old friend, the 45-degree Ramp C. See how that lines up nicely on that side? Okay. What if it's, you know, this side that I want to connect to? Well, I need to find a block with the same facing as this little triangle right here. And, you know, you have a couple of different options that you could actually use for that, but that could include our good old standby, our 2245s. And then I could fit this block, Ramp D, right inside. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Oh, goodness gracious. Slow down, old guy. You're going too damn fast. Okay, we were going to go with, yeah, Ramp D, but we need to rotate it so it's rotated the direction we want it to be. Like so. Okay. So let me show you now a practical application of, or a situation, I should say, where I actually needed to use one of these really weird transitional blocks. So what I'm going to do now is let's go ahead and just clean the slate here with a selection and a delete. So we'll go into the In menu, and we're just going to do a big old wide selection like that. And just adjust it as needed. And it looks like we need to go up one more. And let's also check the height. Make sure we're not going to take out our... I can't really tell from this angle. We got to get over here so we can, see what's going on better. I selected way bigger area, a much larger area than I actually needed to, but it's still going to be way quicker than trying to delete them individually. So let's just bring that up. There we go. So we want it right flush with that surface, and then we can delete everything. We need to go this way. Delete that block, and then remove the selection, press in, and go along our merry way.